Welcome, everyone, to the Tethys Shipyards. I am Takeshi Yamato, the Yardmaster, joining our host, the Housecoat Gamer.
Yo.
This is our second attempt at doing the Excalibur-Class starship. The first time we did this, I accidentally muted the audio from Ron's mic through my headset.
Yes, and that didn't exactly end well. I was constantly demanding if he could hear me.
Yeah, I couldn't. But I can now. So, like I said, we're doing the Excalibur. And this thing has recently been redone by Thomas Marone, the art director of Star Trek Online. And he's come up with lore with it too, for it too. The Excalibur, I will read that lore now. The Excalibur-Class Light Survey Cruiser, CLS, launched in 2382 as a bit of a compromise. Some in the Admiralty would have preferred replenishing the losses from the Dominion War with new sovereigns, but their capability and complexity was delaying timely delivery of more units. The Starfleet Spacecraft Design Advisory Commission proposed target requirements for a new light cruiser that incorporated some modern elements of the Sovereign class, but at a lower tonnage and with some reduced crew capacity and capability. In truth, Starfleet's force depletion from the Dominion War was more serious than most UFP politicians cared to admit, and Starfleet needed to field smaller units faster, as a reaction to the smaller pool of trained officers and spacers on its rosters. The Excalibur proved to be in the best tradition of Starfleet's multi-role mission platform. Throughout the latter decades of the 24th century, Excalibur-class starships conducted frontier surveys, anti-piracy patrols, and dozens of other duties across the UFP. Perhaps due to the classic Constitution-class heritage of the Excalibur's general hull arrangement, the ship even featured in Starfleet recruiting ads and marketing materials for interactive holonovel dramatizations of Starfleet service. This is sort of a nod to how when the game first launched, and hit stores, the Excalibur of the time was basically cover art.
Certainly made sense. A ship that looks like a Connie should be on the cover, seeing as they didn't have all the rights to deal with the Constitution class at the time, something that was presumably resolved in time for Agents of Yesterday. And this was, of course, before the Design the Next Enterprise competition, which we all know how that ended.
Yeah. So, anyway, like I said, this thing recently got a redo, and it looks nice. The only potential issue is the impulse engines are slightly off-kilter. Now, I asked Thomas Marone on Twitter about this, and he said that the angling was sort of meant to mirror the Sovereign, and when asked why it wasn't flush with the hull, that was partly because of what the original thing looked like. The impulse engines in that one protruded from the saucer a little bit, so they're protruding here and angled. But he also said that he believed that the impulse engines were designed for thrust vectoring simply to increase the speed of turning. Now, I can sort of see the point here. I mean, the RCS systems can easily turn a ship, but if you need to turn it a little bit faster than what the RCS can do, maybe add a little bit of impulse thrust in one direction.
Which is completely and utterly pointless. Now, I hate to say this, and this is a direct message to Thomas Marone. This is constructive criticism. I'm not doing this to be an asshole. Okay, I kind of am. but I'm trying to help, because you're going to be redoing all these models. This is a inevitability. I've embraced it. But I want to try and help. Because, I believe your exact quote was, "You believe the RCS system could not push around a 1,000,000-ton starship?" When was the last time you watched TNG, buddy? Specifically,
Yeah.
Season 3, Episode 6. Booby Trap.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail there and go... Now, we don't know the exact weight of a Galaxy-class starship, but according to the technical manual, 4.5 million tons. So your statement of the RCS clusters not being able to move around a 1,000,000-ton starship loses an awful lot of water. In fact, it takes on more water than a certain ship that sank in the North Atlantic in 1912.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Because if they can move around a 5 million ton, rounding up, still valid, starship on its own, and Booby Trap clearly showed that. There's a YouTube clip showing Picard's pilot skills.
Yeah. But, Ron is the lore master of our group, Mr. Morone. He's looked into all sorts of Star Trek lore. So when you watch this, remember, he's seen everything. He looks into everything constantly.
I like to make sure that I know what the hell I'm talking about instead of acting like an idiot.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Star Trek Adventures stat blocks. I already came up with this with the previous video, but maybe this time Ron can give me some feedback. So, entered service date of 2382, and in another comment on Twitter about this thing, Thomas said that it would have a crew of around 250, and that fits nicely into the scale 4 range. The size doesn't hurt either. So that gives us a total of 58 points to work with. Now, this is sort of a hybrid of the Sovereign and the Connie. So here's what I came up.
I have to say this because this dish works. This dish doesn't. The Sovereign dish only works with the Sovereign.
Which material were you doing before?
That was the Galaxy. Which is disappointing because perfect material, horrible deflector dish. Perfect deflector dish, wrong hull material.
Yeah. Well,
so this is a kind of request. Could you give us an option for a Constitution blue glowy? Because that'd be nice.
Yeah. Okay. So now stats. 58 points to spend. In the original video, I gave this thing, in our original attempt, I gave this thing comms 10, computers 9, engines 10, sensors 9, structure 10, and weapons 10.
Perfectly fine. This is just a Connie with a more tactical biased loadout.
Yep. And for departments, I gave it security plus 1. I gave it 1 point each to security, engineering, and science. The Connie and Sovereign both had a point in command instead of a point in engineering, but this is a little more like, I think this is less a frontline exploration thing as it is a
border patrol, General
Yeah,
patrol,
yeah,
anti-piracy.
yeah. So it needs a little bit more engineering stuff. Now, talent-wise, I gave this thing rugged design and improved warp drive. Rugged design from the Connie, and I think it makes sense for something like this. And improved warp drive from the Sovereign, basically inherited from the nacelles. Though, given given Mr. Morone's thoughts on the impulse drive, I could consider giving it improved impulse drive. But
I'll,
I
gi-
think improved.
I'll give him credit for one thing. At least they're not 90 degrees off bore.
Yeah,
Even though 60 degrees is still going to give every single engineer in Starfleet a coronary, an ulcer, and an aneurysm all at the same time. I seriously doubt the ASDB would actually allow this thing to go into production with the cells that far, with impulse engines that far off center.
right. Fair enough. Anyway, I'll stick with improved warp drive. But if someone else wants to do a variant with wants to use improved impulse drive as a variant, feel free. And for weaponry, we have phaser arrays, photon torpedoes, and a strength 3 tractor beam.
Considering that this thing is post-Dominion War, give them the option for quantum torpedoes, but since this is post-Dominion War, those would be awfully rare.
Yeah.
You're going to need less resource-intensive weapons, and a Voyager could build photon torpedoes in the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah. You can add quantum torpedoes into the base profile if you want, or if you're doing a if you're building a tactically focused ship, the tactical operations and warship profiles each have the expanded munitions profile talent, which would let you add any weapon you want to this thing. Quantum torpedoes, disruptor weapons, transphasic torpedoes, anything.
I wouldn't
Anyway,
add disruptors. Starfleet doesn't use disruptors.
right, fair enough. But you could add just about any kind of weapon that Star Trek Adventures has available in the Utopia Planitia rule book. And just give me a moment to look those up, and I will list them. Let's see. Weapons. Okay, here we go. First up, we have energy weapons. We have anti-proton beams, we have disruptors, we have electromagnetic or ionic weapons, we have free electron lasers. Those were used for defense and mining in the early years of human warp travel, but they're still available as an option, mostly for like the early days, but they are listed. Graviton beams, phase polaron beams, phase pulse weapons, again, historical, proton beams, and tetryon beams. And for torpedo weapons, we have chronoton, gravimetric, neutronic, nuclear, historic, photon, photonic, historic, plasma, polaron, positron, quantum, spatial, historic, tetryon, transphasic, and tricobalt. Tetrayonic, transphasic, and tricobalt. And for mines, mines are sort of the same, though there are a few differences. We do not have spatial we do not have spatial mines. We have blackout mines, blade mines, chronoton mines, gravimetric mines, neutronic, nuclear, photon, photonic, plasma, polaron, positron, quantum, and tetrayonic. But yeah, if you use the expanded munitions talent, you can use any of those. The base profile the weapons in the base profile are just that, the base weapons. Expanded munitions can add whatever you want. Anyway, that is Trait Federation Starship. And I don't see any need for a special rule, so I think that's it. I mean, technically, the Constitution, the Tier 2 C-Store Constitution came with a console that basically allowed you to replicate the Star Trek 6 torpedo. She's ready, Jim! Lock and load! But that's something you can pull off with. That's something you can use a task to modify and create. You don't need a special rule for that. So yeah, that is the Excalibur. It is a good design and very useful, but there are a couple of things we could see improved.
Notably, angling the impulse engines to be more aft-facing. And, of course, the dish.
Yes.
The dish needs to be blue. Because it doesn't look right on the Ross. It certainly doesn't look right on this. It only works on the Sovereign class for reasons that I fail to understand. Maybe because it's small.
Maybe.
But yeah. Not doing it to be insulting, Mr. Morone. It's just your logic is a little bit flawed.
Yeah, your logic is flawed, and you are talking with the lore master who thrives on logic.
And if Picard could steer the Enterprise D with only 2 RCS thrusters, steering this thing? If you can toss around a galaxy with 2 RCS thrusters, tossing this thing around with just its RCS thrusters is a joke. And not even a funny one.
Yeah. Anyway, there will
Just
be a link to our...
Just something to keep in mind when you remaster the rest of these. Because we know you're going to be doing it. And I look forward to flying them.
Yep. I will have a link in the description to my document for this, and that document will have some links to to Thomas Morone's Twitter thread for this ship. Because I am giving due credit where credit is due.
Bye.